I've been on the spiritual path for many years now. I think it really got started in 2014, and I've had a lot of setbacks and falls into the dark night of the soul many times, and continued to grow and work through a lot of the trauma that has really held me back. And I've experienced times of peace and definitely progression, but it's very up and down. And so many times I thought I was out of the woods. Um, One of the realizations is that maybe an integral part of the path is to get into the woods. These woods right here, actually. I didn't really think about the play on words until just now, but it's true that nature is healing, and it's part of the shamanic path, which I'm definitely on. But I'm at a period of very intense restoration right now. I started really rigorously meditating at the beginning of February, so about a month ago, because I realized I have to take this really seriously. And I've definitely benefited from it. And I definitely feel like God is doing a lot in my life. It's tricky trying to integrate a lot of Buddhist concepts and practices with my belief in God, because I've gained a lot from Christianity and Christians who have shown me a lot of wisdom and growth, and I think there's something there. But in Buddhism, it's more be a light unto yourself, and the concept of God is as an external force. And I think that there's an aspect of God that is external, and there's also an aspect that is internal. And ultimately, if you become enlightened, the internal and external vanishes, and it's all one. But there's this paradox where if you try to search for the one and you're not willing to live in duality, and experience duality, you're not really experiencing the one. Anyway, about a year ago, I had an experience that I would say was nirvana. I can't really explain it. I could, but it seemed almost unbelievable. But I've had many spiritual experiences over the past few years, and I'm not an enlightened master, and so I certainly wouldn't expect to experience nirvana, but it was the experience of the paradox of duality, non-duality in relationship to each other. So the dual and the non-dual as ultimately non-dual, but there's still the experience of duality. And I did experience what I can only call Satori 2 or 3 years ago. And I know that a lot of sort of beginners on the spiritual path can mistake, certain transcendent experiences for something like Satori, enlightenment, nirvana. I feel pretty confident that is what I've experienced. And I was a little confused because it just came out of nowhere. I was so shocked that it happened, because that's something that happens further down the path, right? and I'm not there yet. But it does. It's interesting because, how do I say this? So I've been listening to spiritual teachers recently, Thich Nhat Hanh, Eckhart Tolle recently, and a guy called Adyashanti. And one of the frustrations that I've had is that Adyashanti in particular, but I've also seen it elsewhere, talks about how that if you try to focus on cultivating a practice over time, then it's almost like it's worthless, because that's thinking about the future, and enlightenment can only happen in the present. And so stop thinking about the future and stop, basically. It's almost like he teaches you how to meditate, and the thing about meditation is it's something that it's important to have as a practice that you do over time, but ultimately it's to bring you into the present. And I would really like to sort of, bring this up, the idea that if I could talk to him, I would say, well, what's the point in putting in any practice at all? You should just immediately just say, oh, I'm just going to sit here and first breath, and you're enlightened, right? So what's the point in having a practice? So I think that for me, it's the way I look at it is you my realization that I needed to have discipline about this and actually intend to practice for a certain amount of time in meditation each day and keep it up every day. That's what gets me to sit down in the first place. That's what motivates me. And I recognize that ultimately the purpose of that is to arrive at a point where you are in the present and you do let go of past and future. So my philosophy has been half the job is just showing up. So I try to show up every day. And it's certainly shown me how futile that focus on the future is. But I wouldn't know that unless I actually were to practice each day. So anyway, I'm frustrated though because I don't expect to be enlightened, but I want something like it. And I do understand, I do have some grasp of what enlightenment is, because I have experienced it for periods of time. And I used to think that enlightenment, once it happens, it's a permanent thing, and it's just this one singular. I read a book on the history of Zen, and it would talk about these different Zen masters and their stories, and it always talked about the moment they became enlightened. But I do think that there are different types of enlightenment. There are different levels of enlightenment, and some are more esoteric out there. Some are just a lot more practical. Some people become these wizened old monks on the top of mountains. There are enlightened masters that are kind of like that, but more often than not, it's maintain your personality, and you're still you, but you see through the concept of what you mean. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but those are just my thoughts in the moment. I hope that makes sense. My perfectionism would suggest that I start over and try to make it more sense, but the whole point of this is just thoughts on the top of my head, and just being real. And it's a lot easier to be real out here in the woods. I laid back yesterday and I just watched the wind in the trees, and something that has really shown me the present is the wind. And I think that in Zen, meditating on a rock or a river or candle flame, those can be your teachers, more than the person who might be guiding you. I don't have a person that's guiding me on that path. So I believe that the wind is my teacher, and sometimes it doesn't matter what's the best teacher. It's just, or what's the best discipline, just so long as you have one, and it's the one that calls to you. And for me, it's the harmony of nature that really does it. And wind really is truly a mysterious force. You could look at it in the context of the 4 elements: earth, wind, air, and fire. Earth, wind, air, no. Earth, water, air, and fire. Air, wind. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it there. And just say that it's amazing how my discontent and frustration and anxiety, once I actually got outside, it's like gone, and I feel at peace. And it's like there's this fear of stepping outside because I'm trying to think about, I'm so conditioned to my environment. I feel institutionalized, and in one way of looking at that angst and that discontent and the depression and the inability to distract myself with art or music or watching entertaining videos, I think it's I'm gonna choose to look at that as driving me to where my heart really needs to be to grow, and that's out here in nature. And I can't just view nature as a band-aid where I just go out and I take a 20-minute walk and then I go back into my cave. So I guess the point of that is to say that discontent and depression and anxiety, you could look at that as, I heard somebody give the metaphor of a lobster, not Jordan Peterson, but he'd probably dig it, which is that when a lobster is ready to molt, it's painful underneath of its shell, and that pain has to crack. Same thing with a seed that is ready to sprout. I saw a picture of a seed ready to sprout, and it said there came a time when the pain of sprouting, the pain of remaining within the seed became more painful than the sprouting. Butterfly and caterpillar metaphor. And I guess that's where I am right now. And this is the year of waking up. This is the year that everything is happening. This is the year of rebirth and death and destruction for a lot of people. I've been through the dying process, and it's hell. And it's the senselessness of pain that makes it so horrible. You know, if you're when you think about soldiers who actually long for combat and they want to go back to war after they've been in it, it's because they feel a sense of purpose. Not all of them. I mean, some people go to war and it's just such a shit show that just tears them apart. And but they feel a sense of purpose, and that's kind of what I long for now. And I think there is one. But all right, I'll just close it off there. Time to get back to life.